This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Maximus. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, voice your choice for the next generation of FedRAMP, finding security in your agency's race to the cloud and defending against cyber threats around the world at the FBI. Welcome to FedGov Today with Francis Rose. The Office of Management and Budget's taking public comment on the future of FedRAMP. The draft version of a plan to modernize FedRAMP's out now. Brian Conrad is acting FedRAMP director and program manager for cybersecurity at the General Services Administration. Brian, welcome. It's great to talk to you. Where do you see FedRAMP today as you start to take this comment from the public about this guidance?
So I see FedRAMP as sitting upon an S-curve. If you think about growth, maturity, and saturation, we've reached saturation in the good sense of the word, in that we don't have to go around to agencies and tell them the value proposition of FedRAMP. Agencies and cloud providers understand that already. We're not resting on our laurels and what we've been able to accomplish over the past 10 years, but looking to move forward and continue to grow the program.
What do you see in this guidance in particular that you want people to respond to? What comment in particular are you seeking, if anything, specific?
It's the breadth of comments that we're interested in, hearing from all the stakeholders, because if you look at the stakeholder community for FedRAMP, it's not just the agencies, it's not just within GSA, but it's all of our industry partners, not just the cloud providers, but the third-party assessors as well. And so there's equities associated with all those stakeholders inside the memo, inside the draft memo.
FedRAMP's about a decade old now, and a White House fact sheet about this request for comment says in the last decade, the security environment's become more complex and the diversity of cloud services has grown dramatically. What does that mean for what the next generation of FedRAMP could look like, do you think, Brian?
I think that's incumbent upon FedRAMP to make sure that we're staying ahead of emerging technology trends, understanding what the demand signal from agencies is to modernize, because what we're doing is in service to their modernization. They recognize the value of commercial cloud, and FedRAMP plays a critical role in federal cybersecurity to make sure that those agencies can modernize.
What's the feedback that they're giving you to say, these are the changes we would like to see?
Make it faster, make it less painful, and of course we're embarking on some initiatives to address those pain points. As I mentioned, we get feedback from our stakeholders throughout the year, and making the strategic decisions to make the authorization process go faster by incorporating technology and modernizing some of our current processes are what the stakeholders are looking for.
Faster isn't surprising, because everybody wants everything faster in every realm of the universe. What are some of the pain points, though, that agencies are talking about? Is it only speed, or are there other things that they're telling you that they would like you to try to smooth out?
Well, we see this from a multifaceted perspective. From the PMO, we want to ensure that we're getting quality packages, because ultimately it's the packages that are reused by subsequent agencies, again, going to the value proposition of FedRAMP, to make sure that what's in the packages is right. It's been validated work by the FedRAMP PMO to ensure that agencies can pick that package up and use it without having to do an authorization from beginning to end.
I know the vendors tell you on a regular basis, because they tell me they tell you on a regular basis about some of the issues that they have, some of the things the changes they would like to see. But from your chair, what are some of the things that you hear regularly from the vendors, and what are the things that they could do to make the process easier on themselves and on you?
Yeah, so collaboration is a big part of FedRAMP, not only our collaboration with the agencies, but collaboration with our commercial partners as well. We don't have a monopoly on good ideas, and so because FedRAMP is such a multifaceted program, we solicit input, or we welcome input from agencies and cloud providers on myriad of subjects. There are industry organizations that have banded together to say, hey, here's some ideas to address the significant change process. Here's some ideas to address, the vulnerability thresholds, and that's valuable information for us to tailor and make program improvements on.
Understanding that this is draft guidance and you're taking comments and there's a process involved here, I believe it's November 27th is the deadline for the comments on this draft. Are there things that you and your colleagues understand it's time for a change? Maybe you don't know what the change is yet, and maybe that's dependent on these comments, but things will be different about FedRAMP a year from now or 2 years from now?
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes to some of our strategic initiatives as well in terms of looking at our processes. Some of the processes that we use to authorize cloud services were established back when the program was. Back in 2017, the Legacy Joint Authorization Board created the accelerated process, which is what they use now. But, when those processes were developed, there were one-size-fits-all. Mm-hmm. And, because of the state of the market and what agencies need, I believe it's time that we look at, processes, and on top of that, incorporate automation into the mix. We want to do the process evaluation because we're not going to spend time automating bad and inefficient processes. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure we have those tied down before we incorporate the automation.
You've used the word automation a number of times. Do you think that's the biggest key to get through the process faster, to get the vendors through faster, to get the solutions to the agencies faster?
I believe so, yes. We've hung our hat on the development of the Open Security Controls Assessment language with NIST several years ago, and that, we believe, is the key for successfully automating the ingestion of security artifacts and the validation of the packages before they come to the government.
Is that a process that you've started already to test at least or pilot, or is that something that's still you're still ahead of that part of the curve?
We've been working on it in-house, and we've had a couple vendors help us out with some stuff, providing us some information. But when we get ready for a wholesale launch, we have some things going on that are going to really make this happen, and so it's just a matter of time.
Another quote from the fact sheet from the White House: the proposed guidance would define the scope of cloud services subject to FedRAMP, set requirements for agencies to use FedRAMP authorized services, outline the responsibilities of the FedRAMP board and the PMO, and promote a transparent, consistent process for the issuing of security authorizations for cloud services. Does this necessarily mean that any of these things are going to change, or just that you're open to the possibility that they could change based on the comments that you get?
I think we're going to see what comes back from the comments and work very closely with OMB like we have consistently to see where that goes.
I want to think about the future of FedRAMP maybe a little more philosophically or existentially than we are here.
Sure.
What do you see for the program 2 years out or 5 years out? What's different about it than today? And what does an agency or what does a company experience similarly or differently than it might today?
Sure. 2 to 5 years out, I see FedRAMP even more entwined in the federal cybersecurity landscape. We play a very unique mission, or we have a very unique mission, sitting kind of at the nexus between commercial providers and agencies. And with increasing the capability of the PMO of FedRAMP to get cloud services authorized and in the environments of agencies more quickly, I think will be a really key point to that. And also, just ensuring that we continue the collaboration because the agency's needs change. The perspectives of the cloud providers who are on the leading edge of technology, we want to make sure that agencies can utilize that technology. So that's part of the reason why we're looking to create a little more velocity in our authorization process.
I confirm here, OMB soliciting public comment on the draft guidance till November 27th, 2023. From a tactical perspective, what happens after that deadline? What do you do with that, with the comments? How do you apply it to what you're going to write into the permanent guidance?
Sure. As I said, we work very closely with the Office of Management and Budget, and we're going to make sure that we've already started leaning forward in the PMO to go through the document and think about what those changes mean for us operationally. Thinking across the whole gamut, what does this mean for staffing? How is the prospect of automation going to support this future? Things of that nature. So we're already thinking about that in the PMO.
Brian, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much, and wish you well as you take these comments. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Francis.
You can find a link to the draft FedRAMP memo on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, finding security in your agency's race to the cloud. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment.
Don't miss the 7th Annual Abbate Government Conference on November 29th in Tysons, Virginia, to learn how you can use low-code and AI process automation to empower your workforce, enhance citizen engagement, and reimagine service delivery. Register now at AbbateGovernment.com.
Welcome back. That new guidance from OMB on FedRAMP is only one piece of the federal government's efforts to increase the security of the data it uses. The models agencies are using are becoming more clear as the data deluge grows. Neal Kronimus is Senior Vice President for Systems Integration at Maximus. Neal, welcome. It's great to talk to you. What's your sense of the trend that you're seeing in FedRAMP from an industry perspective?
So the things that we're seeing, the memo was very appropriate timing coming out last week and stuff, because there's a lot of companies trying to get on to FedRAMP, trying to get authorized, and there's a backlog. And finding new ways to get to FedRAMP faster so we can serve the agencies that serve the citizens. So the use of automation is a great example of that, and so we love that idea of how can we help automate, and also the services we provide. How can we go beyond just what the cloud provides, but provide wholly owned, encapsulated services, so that just helps agencies.
One of the things that Brian talked about is something that I've heard industry folks discuss pretty regularly, and that is the original intent of FedRAMP was you get an ATO and other agencies can use that ATO. A lot of folks in industry say they don't see that as much as the original intent of the program. Is that something that you see, and whatever level of that we see of people doing that now, what do you think would drive more of that so that people could reuse these authorizations on a regular basis? So
yes, I definitely agree. You get an authorization at one agency, it's harder to reuse it at another one. And so that's where I think the process can be re-examined and stuff, and collaborate with the other agencies more with FedRAMP to make it easier of a transition, because the controls are the controls. And so having to go through the process again just because it's a different agency doesn't make as much sense. So let's get the collaboration, get the communication going to make it easier so all parties agree that we can do that reuse.
I mentioned the models at the beginning of this conversation. Hybrid multi-cloud models didn't really exist when FedRAMP was stood up a number of years ago. What's the difference that has made in the way that both companies and agencies think about cloud and think about securing their cloud setups? So
the hybrid multi-cloud provides something agencies didn't have, when FedRAMP was. Because before, I went to this cloud provider. Now the agency can say, I need this service from this cloud and this service from this cloud provider, but I want to keep my data on-prem. And so it gives them a more flexibility, more scalability than they had before. But it also comes with complexities as well, because now I'm dealing with more cloud service providers. I have data in more locations than before, so security becomes very important. And this is where FedRAMP really comes into play here, is because they've already done that authorization across all these cloud providers to help ease those security concerns that may come up. You wrote recently, offerings, an underlying theme with offerings as a service is the data in a time when government looks to make more data-driven decisions and both enable data sharing and keep it secure. That theme of data security, and you just talked about it a second ago, that theme of data security is another thing that didn't really exist very much, that, as I recall at least, when FedRAMP stood up. Cloud at that time was pretty much a storage capability. What's the implication that has had for the way that agencies think about their security? Well, I mean, just look at over the last few years. Data has exploded. We're gathering data from everywhere, both in the enterprise, from external and stuff, and so now we got to store it, and it's beyond storage now. How do I take that data and turn that into actionable information to help the mission? And that's where it didn't exist. So now it's like, how can solution providers come to bear with solutions to help agencies solve their mission critical problems? You heard Brian's vision for what will happen and kind of a timeline for what they expect to do with the comments that they get on the guidance and so on. When that final guidance comes out, what will you look for? Where will you turn first in the document, and what would you expect to see there? So the first thing I'm going to look for is I'm going to look to see what collaborative efforts with FedRAMP, with other agencies, with industry to come together. I mean, the document's great with the draft right now. Human-centered design thinking is great. But I want to see how are they going to implement that down the road. So what kind of suggestions they get back, and how are they going to phase them in over time? Because the whole point of this is to make it easier for the agencies to serve their mission. And that's where we got to get to. And FedRAMP just is the facilitator of that around risk and security.
What are the things that they could do, do you think, to make that process easier? You referenced automation already, and that speed strikes me as very important. But what are the other elements that you think would make this process easier, both for the agencies and for vendors? Well,
one of the biggest things is continuous monitoring, because we got to monitor and see where we're at and have that feedback all the time, not just points in time here, but a continuous that. The other thing is, from an industry, we have to work with FedRAMP. We have to understand what FedRAMP's trying to do. We have to get more services in to get authorized. We also need to educate, everybody, to make sure that everybody understands this is where FedRAMP's going. Whether it's the agency, whether it's an integrator, anybody, we have to have that education.
Neal, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. You can read more about FedRAMP and data security on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, defending against cyber threats around the world at the FBI. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Here's Joe Baptiste, Senior Manager for Technology Consulting at EY, from AI In Depth.
So when you think about a process map, you think about a three-level process map. Well, automations really need to go down to the fifth level, the keystrokes, right? What are you looking at when you're looking at this Excel file? What is the AI going to interpret when it looks at this data? And how is it interpreting it? Is it interpreting it based on bias, right? So then we got to be truthful. How do we make the truth come out of it?
To watch the whole program, go to fedgovtoday.com/AI. Welcome back. Cyber hacking groups are using a new wrinkle in their attacks. The Federal Bureau of Investigation calls that wrinkle dual ransomware attacks. Paul Abbate is Deputy Director of the FBI. Sir, welcome. It's great to talk to you. What does the global threat landscape look like from a cyber perspective at FBI today?
Well, it's evolving rapidly, always is, and it's highly complex. So we're dealing with a wide range of threat actors, have been for a long time. And it really includes the traditional criminal ecosystem, as well as nation-state adversaries like China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, the governments and the intelligence apparatuses of those governments. And what we're really seeing now is a hybrid where elements of both are coming together and posing greater challenges than we've ever seen before. For instance, we have, again, intelligence components within those governments coming together and leveraging and utilizing criminal actors to carry out spying, espionage, influence operations, and even physical attacks. And again, it presents to us and our partners in the intelligence and law enforcement communities really challenges like we've never seen before. But of course, we're working hard in partnership together to overcome those. And really, bottom line is we're all about keeping people safe and protecting our country.
Are you seeing an out-and-out collaboration among those threat actors, the nation states collaborating with the criminal networks, or are they still trying to kind of keep a line of demarcation or separation between them?
I think we've seen both. I mean, we've seen a full-on collaboration in some instances, and that at the same time, they are trying to obfuscate and hide that within the work that they're doing together.
Is that the biggest change that you're seeing in the threat landscape? Is that kind of the coming together of those two sides of it?
I would say that's one of the top trends that we've seen in the last few years, but also technology, sort of the evolution and the leveraging and reliance on technology by all of these threat actors, particularly with artificial intelligence, which is talked about and focused on quite a bit lately, but all of those actors are using that to increase the effectiveness of the attacks and the schemes and the activities that they're focusing on all of us.
What is your sense of the ability of those threat actors to use technology like AI? Are they applying these technologies in a way that is easy for us to detect, or are they becoming better and more skilled at their abilities to deploy these things?
Well, look, everything is an evolution, and everyone is adaptable, and that's part of what we focus on each and every day to stay ahead of and keep up with those who pose a threat to our citizens and our country. So it's a challenge. I think we've been very effective and we've had good success in that, but we've got to remain focused and disciplined and rigorous in the work that we do to keep up and stay ahead.
You referenced your partners. Who are your key partners in the work that you're doing?
Well, it's all inclusive. So I'm going to start with the community itself, the citizens that we serve. Of course, we're very engaged there. We need to listen to them in terms of being guided towards meeting the needs, again, protecting people, keeping people safe. And then within government, both intelligence and law enforcement, even beyond at every level, federal, state, and local, critically important that we are fully interconnected and collaborating with our partners within those realms in order to be most effective on executing the mission. And then the private sector. So I know we had intended to meet at first at the Edge Security Summit, but there's a real focus within that on the private sector. And in recent years, there's been a recognition that our partnerships, government and private sector, are more necessary than ever in order to identify, keep ahead of the threat, and to be preventative in the work that we do.
Is it your sense that the private sector is becoming more comfortable exchanging information with law enforcement and the cyber community in the federal government?
Absolutely. Again, we've seen a rapid evolution. It's all about trust there. So we've really leaned into and have put a lot of effort into reaching out to the private sector, our partners in that arena, to build trust in advance of the need to come together in a crisis situation. We've really seen it paying dividends now, and I think we've come a long way, but we still have a lot of work to do to continue to build upon that and reaffirm the trust within the relationships that we already have.
What is some of that work that you would like to continue, and what would you like to see the private sector do to continue in that information exchange?
Well, look, it's mutual. I mean, it's a two-way street. So it goes both ways, and again, it's all about sharing information and intelligence and putting everyone in the best position, you know, no matter where you sit, to identify the threats as far in advance as we possibly can, and then take action in order to prevent harm from occurring. That's the bottom line.
Are you able to anticipate those events more than you expected? When I first came into this space a long time ago, it was a lot more difficult for federal government organizations in particular to anticipate cyber events or to do defense ahead of time. Is that capability growing?
I believe it is definitely growing. It's always been a challenge, and it will continue to be a challenge, and that's what the work is all about. And it goes back to the partnerships and the trust within that. We have to collaborate and communicate, no matter which community you operate within. Build that trust, share information in detail. That's what puts, again, everyone in the best position to prevent harm from occurring.
You mentioned the partners that you have in this space. We talked a little bit about them. How do you expect your role at the FBI to grow over time and to trend over time in the cyber area? And how does that fit with the work that you're doing with your partners?
It's the mission that we've had historically. I think we've really developed and progressed in many of the ways that we've touched on here. One, a focus on developing intelligence and information in advance to identify the threat and then put us in the best position to partner with others to be preventative. Mm-hmm. That's number one. And then that's reflected in the partnerships, and everything that grows out of this goes into making that happen in reality.
What are some of the tools that you have available now that you didn't in the past that are helpful to you? Either as specific or as general as you can be, I understand, but I wonder if there are technological tools that are enabling you to do some of the things today that you can do that you couldn't in the past.
Well, look, technology has helped everyone in advance. It's certainly helped us as well. So many of the same tools that adversaries are looking to exploit and take advantage of, we're applying those as well. Artificial intelligence, for example, really has, though we're in the early stages of applying that and doing it in a responsible way, it really speeds our efforts in terms of aggregating data, analyzing it, and getting the value out of that we can apply toward the mission that we do. A more specific example, we use it, as many do, in terms of language translations and transcriptions. It really, at a basic level, speeds and aids the work that we do and magnifies it so that we're able to do it more efficiently, speedily, and effectively, all in all. That applies across all the disciplines that we're engaged in.
Sir, I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to connect in Las Vegas. I'm glad we did today, and I appreciate you being with me.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
You can read more about cyber at the FBI on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today continues in a moment. Here's Matt Topper from Uber Ether on Innovation in Government, FedRAMP, presented by Carahsoft.
A lot of commercial SaaS companies, software vendors will come in and be like, oh, it's like customer experience in the commercial world. No, this is really a lot of times life and death and jackpot situations with highly, highly funded nation-state actors. Mm-hmm. And to combat those threats is a different level of thinking and a different level of trust you have to build with the customers to prove that you are doing what you say you're going to do over and over and over again, and really prove out that the trust is there, and showing them proactively how you're doing it and making them feel comfortable to allow you to protect their most sensitive data in many of these cases. Mm-hmm.
To learn more, go to fedgovtoday.com/FedRAMP. Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, Abbate Government is coming November 29th at Capital One Hall in Tysons. You'll learn how to achieve superior outcomes when you combine the right people, processes, and advanced technologies. Speakers from DoD, civilian agencies, and industry will help you empower your workforce, enhance citizen engagement, and reimagine service delivery to advance your agency's mission. You can read more and register at appiangovernment.com. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10:30 with the Deputy Director of CISA, Nitin Natarajan, will be here. I'm Francis Rose. I'll see you next Sunday. Thanks very much for watching. Have a great week.
Don't miss the 7th Annual Abbate Government Conference on November 29th in Tysons, Virginia, to learn how you can use low-code and AI process automation to empower your workforce, enhance citizen engagement, and reimagine service delivery. Register now at appiangovernment.com.